The galaxy was peaceful, or so it seemed. The Kreenari, an ancient and once prosperous alien species, had enjoyed centuries of harmony. Their blue, crystalline cities shimmered across their planet, and their people, known for their intellectual pursuits, lived in a serene existence. But everything changed in an instant. Without warning, the Threx, a fierce and technologically advanced race, descended upon them. Their warships, massive and menacing, ripped through the Kreenari's defenses with ease. The Kreenari had never known such destruction. Their ships, smaller and less powerful, stood no chance against the Threx's brutal assault. Within hours, entire cities were reduced to rubble, and the Kreenari's fleets, once the pride of their people, were annihilated in deep space. Amidst the chaos, the Kreenari Council gathered in a desperate bid to save what remained of their civilization. Their planet's surface was already scorched in places, and their people scattered, fleeing to the corners of their homeworld. The Threx were merciless, determined to wipe out any resistance. With no other hope left, the Kreenari decided to send out a distress signal, a cry for help to any civilization that might hear. Their message traveled across the stars, passing through systems and galaxies, until it reached the outskirts of a small sector of space where the United Earth Fleet was stationed. The humans, led by Admiral Samuel Riley, had been exploring these far regions, far from the main centers of galactic conflict. The fleet wasn't expecting any significant events. They were a peaceful, exploratory force. But the distress signal was different. It wasn't a typical call for help from a minor colony or an occasional skirmish. The message was desperate, a plea for survival from a people on the brink of extinction. Riley, hearing the urgency in the Kreenari's voice, knew immediately that the situation was dire. The message was simple yet clear. We are being attacked. The Threx are destroying us. We need assistance. Admiral Riley stood on the bridge of the flagship, his mind racing. Humanity's fleet was small, but the ships were powerful, and their weapons were among the most advanced in the galaxy. The decision was not an easy one. Riley knew the risks. Responding to the Kreenari would mean entering a conflict with the Threx, a race known for their ruthless nature and immense military strength. However, Riley was also aware of something that made him act without hesitation. Humanity, after centuries of conflict on their own homeworld, had learned the value of unity, compassion, and defense of the helpless. It was these values that had shaped their rise to power. Riley turned to his crew, determination in his eyes. Admiral Samuel Riley stood in the command center of humanity's flagship, his mind heavy with the weight of the decision. The distress signal from the Kreenari was still playing in the background, the message echoing through the quiet room. We are being attacked. The Threx are destroying us. We need assistance. Riley stared at the blinking light of the signal's transmission, deep in thought. His crew waited for him to speak, knowing that whatever decision he made would send them into uncharted territory. The Threx were a dangerous enemy, known throughout the galaxy for their savage raids and advanced weaponry. If they were truly attacking the Kreenari, it meant a major war could erupt. Humanity was a growing power in the galaxy, but it was not yet ready to engage in an all-out conflict. Still, Riley could not ignore the desperation in the Kreenari's voice. The Kreenari were a peaceful people, a race of intellectuals who valued knowledge over conquest. They had never been a threat to anyone. Yet, they were now facing complete annihilation. If humanity didn't intervene, the Kreenari might be wiped from existence. Admiral, are you sure about this? Commander Sarah Torres, Riley's second-in-command, asked. Her voice was steady, but there was a trace of concern in her eyes. The Threx don't take kindly to interference. We could be walking into a trap. Riley looked at her, his face hardening with resolve. I know, Sarah, but we can't just ignore them. We've fought our own battles for survival. We can't turn our backs on others who are suffering. It's what makes us human. Torres nodded, understanding the weight of his words. It was not just a military decision. It was a moral one. Humanity had always fought to protect the innocent, to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. Riley knew that if they helped the Kreenari, they might make an enemy of the Threx, but it was a risk he was willing to take. Riley turned to the holographic display in the center of the room. The Kreenari homeworld, a stunning blue planet, flickered on the screen. He zoomed in, analyzing the situation. The Kreenari's defensive fleet had been obliterated, and their planet was under siege. The Threx ships, massive and menacing, hovered in orbit, waiting to crush any remaining resistance. "We'll need to move fast," Riley said, his voice firm. "Prepare the fleet for battle. We're heading to the Kreenari homeworld." The crew sprang into action. The ship's engines roared to life as the fleet's ships began to align, preparing to jump into faster-than-light travel. Riley felt the weight of the decision settle in his chest, but he didn't falter. He had made his choice. Humanity's fleet would be the Kreenari's lifeline. As the ships prepared for their journey, Riley walked over to the viewport, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. He thought about the Kreenari, their calm, peaceful ways, and how they had never once sought conflict. But now their very survival depended on the intervention of a race that had only recently begun to leave its homeworld and explore the stars. Riley knew that whatever happened next, nothing would be the same. If humanity could stop the Threx, it would mark the beginning of a new chapter in the galaxy's history. A chapter where the weak would not be left to perish, and where the strength of one could save the lives of many. The fleet was ready, and so was he. The stars blurred into streaks of light as humanity's fleet entered faster than light travel, racing toward the Kreenari homeworld. Admiral Riley stood at the front of the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the empty expanse of space. His thoughts were with the Kreenari. He wondered what their homeworld was like now, under attack. How much of their once beautiful civilization remained. The fleet's ships, sleek and powerful, slipped through the void, ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. Riley's mind wandered to the Threx. They were brutal, vicious, and far more advanced than the Kreenari. He had no doubt the Kreenari would be completely overwhelmed by their invaders. He hoped they could make it in time. It wasn't long before the fleet emerged from FTL travel, and the Kreenari homeworld appeared before them, a blue jewel against the blackness of space. But the beauty of the planet was overshadowed by the smoke and fire that billowed from its surface. The atmosphere flickered with the flashes of battle as the Threx warships circled in high orbit, their weapons lighting up the night sky. "Admiral, we've entered the system," Torres said, her voice steady. "The Kreenari homeworld is under heavy attack. There are multiple Threx ships in orbit, and their surface defenses are barely functioning." Riley took a deep breath. "We need to move quickly. Deploy the fighter squadrons. I want the Threx ships to know we're here." The fleet's fighters, small and nimble, shot out of the hangars, quickly scattering into position. The heavy warships remained in formation behind, their massive engines glowing as they prepared for the next move. Riley turned to his comm officer. "Get me a channel to the Kreenari survivors." The officer worked quickly, his fingers flying over the controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Riley nodded and spoke into the comm. "This is Admiral Samuel Riley of the United Earth Fleet. We are here to assist you. Stay strong. We'll get you out of this." The silence on the other end was heavy, but soon a voice came through, soft, cautious. "This is High Commander Zarna of the Kreenari Defense Forces. You came." "We came," Riley replied, his voice firm. "Prepare for reinforcements. We'll deal with the Threx." He turned to Torres. "Initiate attack pattern Alpha. Target the Threx warships. We'll clear a path for the survivors." Without hesitation, the fleet launched into action. The warships unleashed their devastating weapons, sending energy blasts crashing into the Threx ships. The smaller fighter squadrons darted around, targeting the vulnerable points on the enemy ships. The Kreenari, still reeling from the loss of their own fleet, watched in stunned silence as the humans fought with incredible precision, their tactics unlike anything the Kreenari had ever seen. Despite their surprise, the Krunari quickly regrouped, joining the humans in the fight. They sent their few remaining warships into the fray, trying to distract the Threx long enough to give the humans a chance. But it was clear, the Krunari were no match for the Threx without help. Riley's fleet continued to push forward, each attack calculated, each strike made with deadly intent. Slowly, the tide of the battle began to turn. One Threx ship after another was destroyed or disabled by the combined power of humanity's fleet and the Krunari's efforts. As the last of the Threx warships began to retreat, Admiral Riley's ship made its way toward the Krunari's damaged space station, where the survivors were waiting. The battle had been fierce, but humanity had delivered on its promise. The Krunari were safe, for now. Commander Zharna's voice came through the comm again, this time with a tone of disbelief. "You did it. You really did it. You saved us." Riley allowed himself a brief smile. "We're not done yet. Let's get you to safety first." The Krunari, who had once thought of the humans as distant strangers, now saw them as something more. Protectors. They had found in humanity an unexpected ally, one who would stand by them when the galaxy seemed to have turned its back. And for Admiral Riley, this was only the beginning. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, but humanity had just proven it was ready to face it head-on. The aftermath of the battle left humanity's fleet stationed in orbit around the Krunari homeworld, the debris from the Threx warships slowly drifting away into the cold expanse of space. The planet below, still scared from the attacks, was quiet, but there was a sense of relief in the air. The immediate threat had passed, but for the Krunari, the war was far from over. Admiral Riley stood in the command center of his flagship, observing the status reports from his fleet. Their weapons had taken a toll, but they were still operational. The Krunari, on the other hand, were shaken. They had been so close to losing everything. Riley knew that while the battle had been won, the real challenge was still ahead, earning the trust of the Krunari and forming a lasting alliance. "We've secured the survivors, Admiral," Torres reported, her voice steady. "They're taking refuge in our medical ships. We've sent them all the supplies we could spare." Riley nodded. "Good. We'll need to help them rebuild. And we need to move quickly. The Threx won't stay down forever. They'll be back." At that moment, the comm officer's voice broke in. "Admiral, we have an incoming transmission from the Krunari. High Commander Zharna requests a meeting." Riley straightened, his mind already racing. The Krunari had seen what humanity was capable of, but he understood their hesitation. They had always been a peaceful race, not accustomed to conflict, let alone making alliances with strangers. He knew that today's battle had earned them some respect, but it would take more than that to forge a true partnership. "Put it through," Riley ordered. A moment later, Zharna's face appeared on the screen. The Krunari commander looked exhausted, his blue skin pale from the battle, but his expression was determined. "Admiral Riley," Zharna began, his voice calm but guarded. "We are grateful for your assistance, but we must ask, why did you come? Why risk your fleet and your people for us?" Riley met Zharna's gaze through the screen. He had expected this question. It wasn't just a matter of military strategy or politics. It was a matter of principle. The Krunari were not the only race in the galaxy who had suffered. Humanity had learned the hard way what it meant to be oppressed, to be on the brink of destruction. They had fought their way to power, not just for their own survival, but to make sure that no one would have to face what they had faced alone. "We came because it's the right thing to do," Riley replied. "You were in need, and we couldn't turn our backs. Humanity's strength isn't just in our technology or our fleet. It's in our willingness to help others, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost." Zharna studied him carefully, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "You don't understand. The Threx." "I understand more than you think," Riley interrupted. "The Threx are ruthless, and they will stop at nothing to destroy you. But they're not invincible. Together, we can fight them. And together, we can make sure that your people survive." There was a long pause. Riley could see the weight of Jarna's thoughts on his face. It was clear the Kreenari had always relied on their intellect, never on military power. This was new to them, but perhaps, just perhaps, they were beginning to see the value in forming an alliance with the humans. Finally, Jarna spoke again. "Then, we will accept your help. Admiral, we are not warriors, but we will stand with you." Riley smiled, a feeling of relief washing over him. The alliance was not just a military one. It was a bond of trust, of shared values, and it would be the key to their survival. The peace that followed the formation of the alliance between humanity and the Kreenari was brief. As the days passed, the two races began to work together, sharing technology and strategies. Humanity's fleet helped the Kreenari rebuild their damaged cities and repair their ships. But deep in the cold void of space, a storm was brewing, one that neither the humans nor the Kreenari could ignore. Admiral Riley stood at the command center of his flagship, staring at the holographic display. The Threx had not yet responded to their defeat, but Riley knew they wouldn't let the attack on their fleet go unpunished. The Threx were ruthless, and if they were anything, they were vengeful. A loud beep echoed through the room as a new signal came in. Riley's eyes narrowed as he saw the message's source. The Threx fleet. It was a warning, one that sent chills down his spine. "Admiral," Commander Torres spoke, her voice tense. "We've just received a transmission from Threx Command. They've launched a massive fleet toward the Kreenari homeworld. They're coming for revenge." Riley gripped the edge of the table. He had known this moment would come. The Threx wouldn't just let humanity's fleet stand in their way. They would return, and they would strike with everything they had. "We need to prepare for impact," Riley said, his voice low but resolute. "This time, we don't just defend, we strike first." The Kreenari, though not trained in battle, had quickly learned from their new allies. Jarna and his commanders were now familiar with the advanced tactics that humanity had used to defeat the Threx in the first battle. They weren't warriors by nature, but the Kreenari had a deep understanding of strategy and intelligence. They knew how to fight smart. The combined fleet, now a strange but powerful mix of Kreenari and human forces, moved into position around the Kreenari homeworld. The Threx fleet, massive and intimidating, emerged from a nearby asteroid field. The size of their ships was enough to make anyone hesitate, but the humans and Kreenari stood firm. Riley stood at the center of his command room, watching the enemy fleet approach. His fleet was smaller, but it was faster and more precise. The Kreenari warships had been upgraded with human technology, giving them a new edge. They were ready for this. "Admiral," Tord spoke again, her voice filled with urgency. "The Threx are charging their weapons. They're going to hit us with everything they have." "Let them," Riley replied, his eyes cold with determination. "We've got this." He gave the order, and humanity's fleet moved forward, engaging the Threx head-on. The first volley of laser fire lit up the darkness of space. Humanity's ships dodged and weaved, their smaller size and advanced technology giving them the ability to outmaneuver the Threx. But the Threx weren't so easily defeated. The battle was fierce. Explosions rocked the battlefield, and the sounds of laser fire and missile launches filled the silence of space. The Kreenari, despite their lack of combat experience, fought valiantly alongside the humans. Their ships, now armed with human weapons, held their ground, taking down several Threx ships. Admiral Riley's flagship moved through the chaos, its weapons unleashing a devastating barrage. His fleet's tactics were flawless, human ingenuity at its finest. The Threx were caught off guard, and their larger ships were slowly being picked apart by the humans' precise attacks. But the Threx weren't done yet. They unleashed their trump card, a massive, heavily armed dreadnought, one that outclassed any ship humanity had ever faced. It was clear that the Threx weren't just here to fight. They were here to destroy. "Prepare to engage the dreadnought," Riley ordered. This ends now. The combined forces of humanity and the Kreenari focused their firepower on the dreadnought. It was a long, brutal battle, but with each coordinated strike, the humans and Kreenari wore it down. Finally, with one last shot from humanity's flagship, the dreadnought exploded into a brilliant fireball, its destruction sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Threx, realizing they had been outsmarted and outgunned, began to retreat. Their fleet was in ruins, and the Kreenari homeworld was safe. For now. Riley let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We did it," he muttered. Jarna's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral Riley, we owe you everything. Without your leadership, we would have fallen." The victory over the Threx fleet was hard-won, but it didn't last long. In the days that followed, the Kreenari homeworld slowly began to heal, and a sense of cautious optimism took hold. The alliance between humanity and the Kreenari was stronger than ever, and for the first time in a long while, the Kreenari began to feel a glimmer of hope. Admiral Riley and his crew remained in orbit above the Kreenari planet, helping them with recovery efforts and preparing for any further Threx retaliation. But there was something about the silence that bothered Riley. The Threx may have retreated, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Riley sat in his command chair, staring at the holographic star map in front of him. Torres, standing nearby, noticed his furrowed brow. "Admiral," she said, her voice serious, "the Kreenari are asking for a meeting. They've detected something strange in the system." Riley turned his attention to her, his mind snapping back to the present. "Strange?" he asked. "They've detected a new fleet coming from deep space," Torres replied. "It's not Threx. It's something else." Riley's gut twisted. He had hoped the Threx would be the last of their problems. But now, it seemed like a new threat was emerging. He couldn't afford to wait. He had to find out what was coming. "Put them through," Riley ordered. A moment later, the face of High Commander Jorina appeared on the screen, his expression tense. The Kreenari leader's normally calm demeanor was replaced with clear concern. "Admiral Riley, we have detected an unfamiliar fleet entering the system," Jarna began. "It's unlike anything we've seen before. We are not sure if it's another faction or some kind of new threat, but their approach is aggressive." Riley's mind raced. Another enemy so soon after the Threx. It seemed too much to handle, but he had no choice. Humanity had to be ready for anything. "Do we have any intel on them?" Riley asked. "We are still trying to analyze their ships, but they are unlike any species we've encountered," Jarna replied. "They are fast, heavily armored, and seem to use advanced cloaking technology. We believe they are on a direct course to your position." Riley's heart sank. A new enemy with unknown capabilities. This was not something he was prepared for. Humanity's fleet had taken a beating during the Threx battle, and while the Kreenari had recovered, they were still not a military power. They needed to be ready, and they needed to act fast. "Understood," Riley said, standing up and turning to his crew. "Prepare for battle. We don't know what we're facing, but we're not going to wait for them to attack first." The crew moved quickly, rallying around their leader. Riley could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him, but he didn't hesitate. He had seen how humanity had fought alongside the Kreenari, and he knew they could do it again. Whatever this new enemy was, they would face it together. As the fleet readied itself, Riley looked out at the stars through the viewport. The vast emptiness of space had always been something that inspired awe, but now it felt different. It was a reminder of how fragile peace was in the galaxy. The threat of annihilation was never far away. Jarna's voice came over the comm once more. "Admiral, we have no way of knowing what they want. They may not come peacefully." "We'll find out soon enough," Riley replied. "But no matter what, we stand united. The Threx may have been a challenge, but we'll face whatever this is together." The unknown fleet grew closer with each passing minute. The stars in the distance began to twinkle brighter as the enemy ships neared the Kreenari homeworld. The tension aboard humanity's fleet was palpable. Crew members moved quickly, their faces focused, knowing that they were about to face an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. Admiral Riley stood in the command center, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the holographic map in front of him. The new fleet was just outside sensor range, but every instinct told him they were coming for something or someone. Humanity's ships were ready for whatever lay ahead, but Riley couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. "Admiral," Torres's voice broke through his thoughts. "We've identified their ships. They are not threats, but they're using similar technology. They're heavily shielded and cloaked, and they've begun to spread out across the system. We won't be able to track them once they're fully in range." Riley nodded. The cloaking technology was a problem. Without clear sight of the enemy, it would be hard to mount a successful defense. But they still had an advantage. Humanity was adaptable. They could think on their feet. "We can't wait for them to strike first," Riley said firmly. "Prepare the fleet. Set up defensive formations. We'll engage them the moment they make their move." A voice interrupted him over the comm, a voice Riley didn't expect to hear. "Admiral Riley, this is High Commander Zorna. We've detected strange signals coming from the enemy fleet. It seems to be a form of communication, but we can't decipher it." Riley's brow furrowed. Communication. That meant they weren't entirely hostile, at least not yet. He had been expecting a full-on attack, but now he had to wonder what this new enemy wanted. "We'll analyze it as best we can," Riley replied. "Keep me updated." The fleet sat in silence, waiting for any sign of movement. The Kreenari ships, now integrated with humanity's fleet, held firm in their positions. Both races were prepared, but the question was, prepared for what? Then, without warning, the unknown ships appeared. They didn't just decloak, they seemed to materialize out of thin air, moving so fast and so precisely that Riley was momentarily stunned. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Sleek, dark ships with sharp, angular designs that seemed to reflect no light, as if they were born from the darkness itself. "They're here," Torres said, her voice a mix of awe and fear. "They're too fast. We can't track them all." Riley's mind raced. The new ships were clearly faster than anything humanity had, and they had an eerie ability to slip through their defenses. But one thing was certain. They had come for something. He wasn't sure what yet, but it was only a matter of time before they made their move. Suddenly, a sharp signal broke through the silence. The unknown fleet had launched an attack. The first volley of weapons came from the darkness, hitting humanity's ships before they could react. The blasts were powerful, tearing through shields with ease. The Kreenari fleet was equally targeted, their ships scrambling to avoid the incoming fire. "Return fire," Riley ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "Focus on the closest ships. Don't let them get too close." The human fleet retaliated with everything they had. Energy beams flashed across space, striking the dark ships, but their advanced shielding absorbed most of the hits. The Kreenari, though inexperienced in battle, fought with fierce determination, launching their own weapons at the enemy. Yet it was clear this enemy was stronger, faster, and more advanced than the Threx. As the battle raged on, Riley's mind raced. The enemy was attacking with precision, as if they knew exactly what to do to break through the defenses. But there was something more, something unsettling about their tactics. It was almost as if they were testing the humans and the Kreenari, probing for weaknesses. "Admiral," Torres called out, her voice urgent. "We've detected an anomaly. There's something inside the enemy fleet. A larger ship. It's the source of the signals we've been receiving. It's not just an attack fleet. It's a command ship." Riley's eyes widened. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a targeted strike, aimed at taking out their leadership. The enemy wasn't just here to destroy. They were here to conquer. "Focus all fire on that command ship," Riley ordered. "Take it down, and we take them down." The battle with the unknown fleet raged on. The dark ships moved swiftly, almost ghost-like, avoiding most of humanity's attacks with ease. Every moment was a struggle, as the enemy seemed to be one step ahead. The coordination between humanity and the Kreenari was strong, but it wasn't enough. The mysterious fleet was relentless. Admiral Riley stood at the heart of the command center, his eyes locked on the tactical display. His hands were steady, despite the chaos around him. The dark ships continued to strike, their energy weapons tearing through the shields of humanity's fleet. Every hit was a blow to their defense, but Riley knew they couldn't back down now. "Admiral," Torres called out, her voice sharp. "We've lost 2 of our smaller ships. The enemy's technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. Their cloaking is almost perfect. We can't track their movements." Riley's jaw tightened. This was unlike anything they'd ever fought. The threats were brutal, but they had a certain predictability. The enemy fleet, on the other hand, was elusive, moving with such precision that it seemed almost calculated. It was clear that whoever these enemies were, they had planned for this. "Focus on the command ship," Riley ordered, his voice firm. "If we take that down, the rest of their fleet might scatter. We have to break their coordination." The command ship was massive, a black behemoth at the heart of the enemy formation. It glowed faintly, as though it were a living thing, pulsing with a strange energy. Riley's heart pounded as he watched humanity's fleet and the Kreenari ships maneuver into position. The battle was escalating, but they had a chance if they could just break through. "We're ready, Admiral," Commander Torres said, her fingers flying across the controls. "All ships are locked on the target." Riley nodded, and with a quick motion, he gave the order. "Fire everything we've got. Now." A barrage of energy blasts erupted from humanity's ships, followed by the Kreenari's newly adapted weaponry. The combined assault lit up space like a firestorm. The dark ships tried to evade, but the concentrated firepower of the Allied fleets overwhelmed them. The command ship's shields flickered as it took several direct hits, but it didn't fall. "Increase firepower," Riley shouted. "We can't give them a chance to recover." Just as the command ship began to retaliate, its weapons unleashed a deadly wave of energy that struck several Kreenari ships. Explosions tore through space, but the Kreenari refused to retreat. Their ships continued to fire, pushing back the invaders. Riley's mind raced. The enemy's firepower was immense, but humanity and the Kreenari had an advantage: determination. They were fighting for their homes, for survival. The more Riley watched, the more he saw that the Kreenari were adapting, learning quickly. They fought not like soldiers, but like survivors, and that gave Riley hope. Then, just as things seemed darkest, a new signal came through. It was faint at first, almost lost in the noise of the battle. But it grew stronger, clearer. "It's coming from the Kreenari fleet," Torres said, eyes wide with realization. "They've cracked the enemy's communication code. We've got a message." Riley's heart skipped a beat. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Jarna's face appeared, sweat on his brow, but determination in his eyes. "Admiral," Jarna said, his voice firm, "we've found their weakness. The cloaking technology is powered by a central core inside their command ship. If we can hit that core, we can disable the rest of their fleet. We just need a precise strike." Riley nodded, a feeling of relief flooding through him. "Get that information to all ships. We're taking them down. Together." Humanity's fleet, now working in sync with the Kreenari, focused all their fire on the core of the command ship. The battle had shifted. With the new knowledge, their tactics were more precise. The dark ships could no longer hide in the shadows. The next volley hit the command ship's core directly. The explosion that followed was deafening. A massive shockwave rippled through space, and the command ship shuddered. Slowly, it began to break apart, its dark form crumbling like a shattered mirror. "We did it," Torres whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. But Riley's eyes never left the screen. The battle wasn't over yet, but this was a turning point. The enemy fleet, now leaderless and vulnerable, began to scatter. Humanity and the Kreenari had struck a powerful blow. "Hold steady," Riley ordered. "Finish them off." As the remaining enemy ships retreated, the once feared fleet slowly crumbled, the darkness of their advanced technology flickering out. Humanity and the Kreenari had won the battle. But Riley knew there was much more to come. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. The enemy fleet, once a terrifying shadow on the horizon, was now broken and retreating. The command ship had been destroyed, and its dark influence over the rest of the fleet shattered. Humanity and the Kreenari stood victorious, but the cost of the battle had been steep. Both fleets had lost ships, and many brave souls would never return. Yet, as the last of the dark ships flowed into the depths of space, there was a sense of quiet triumph. Admiral Riley stood at the observation deck of his flagship, staring out at the vastness of space. The battle was over, but he knew this victory was only a small step in a much larger struggle. There were more threats out there, more enemies who would seek to challenge their newfound alliance. But for now, they had secured their future. Beside him, Commander Torres stood silently, her eyes scanning the damage reports on her handheld device. "Admiral, a fleet is stable. We've lost some good ships, but the Kreenari are already making plans to rebuild." Riley nodded. "They're strong. They'll recover." He could see it in the Kreenari now, the strength they had gained in this fight, the determination they had shown. They were no longer just allies. They were partners. Together, they had faced a foe unlike any they had ever imagined and come out on top. Starna, the Kreenari High Commander, appeared on the comms, his face tired but filled with gratitude. "Admiral Riley, you and your people have saved us. We have lost much, but we have gained something far more important. A true ally. I do not know how to thank you." Riley's voice was calm but firm. "No thanks are needed. We fought together. That's what matters." Zharna nodded. "You've proven that we can stand side by side. The galaxy is full of dangers, and we are stronger for it. But we also have a chance now, an opportunity to build something greater than what we were before." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The war had shown them the true power of unity. Humanity and the Kreenari, two species from vastly different worlds, had fought together and emerged victorious. And now, with the enemy scattered and their defenses shattered, they had the chance to create a future where peace could truly thrive. Riley's thoughts drifted to the future. There were still so many unknowns, so many challenges ahead. But for the first time, he felt hope. Real hope. They had faced an impossible enemy, and together, they had won. That meant they could face anything the galaxy threw at them. "The Kreenari have already started to rebuild their cities," Torres said, breaking his thoughts. "They want to start working on new defenses, new technologies together. They're eager to learn from us." "Good," Riley replied. "We'll help them however we can. We're not just allies in war. We're allies in peace." As the two stood together, watching the stars, the promise of a new dawn seemed to shine through the darkness. The war was over, but their journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries yet to be uncovered. But this time, they were ready. The alliance between humanity and the Kreenari was more than just a partnership. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when species came together, not as enemies, but as